Hello everyone, this is Susan Bonner and we're going to work on Sketchup and bringing the 3D warehouse objects in to Photoshop as a tool to really get really awesome environments. So this project has a lot of tutorials and guides on the website for Digital Imaging 1. The first thing that we're going to do is go to sketchup.com. And so I'll click in here. And just recognize that it's a free tool. I do want to give you an overview of what we're going to do. You have so many opportunities in SketchUp to make objects, download objects. So here's a boat, a different view of the boat in a PNG. We have access to really kind of making full environments, bringing, this is an alien spaceship invasion on a Frank Lloyd Wright house. So these are two objects that I'm bringing together. Also really playing with the depth of field. I'm going to show you how to do that. As well as we'll be bringing objects into our original thumbnails. So I've got like a Norway church and some delivery trucks. If I zoom out, I have another one that's in there too. That is the truck chase scene that I made in SketchUp. More of this atmospheric perspective that we can apply with fog. Often the fog is a color base, but when we bring it into Photoshop, I would recommend that you turn it into grayscale. So pretty awesome way to get references that are 3D that you don't have to build that are coming out of the 3D warehouse. So next I want to show us from sketchup.com how to get in. You will have to create a sign in. I'm actually already signed in, and then also you will have to go and use there are a lot of different versions, but we are going to right now use SketchUp free. So we're going to go to that, and the next step is to click Start Modeling. And there's SketchUp. There's a lot of things that you could look for in doing this. I do like to use feet and inches since I'm in America. Now that we're in SketchUp here, I'm going to introduce you to the 3D warehouse. All right, so I'm back in SketchUp. They must know it's me. They've got my glasses on there. In order to get into the 3D warehouse, you are going to click on Components. Well, actually, this is Components. You can X these menu systems out, and then you're going to click and search 3D Warehouse. And for this particular demo, I'd like for you to follow along and do exactly what I do if you're in my class. So we're going to search for Pagoda, P-A-G-O-D-A, and then you hit return. And then you have all these awesome pre-built pagodas that other people have loaded into here. I've worked with a lot of these, and they're pretty fantastic. I'm going to actually go down to the bottom and click to the next one. So I'm looking for a particular one that I know works really well. This one I like to use like as a bus stop. I think that functions really well. I'm going to just kind of keep searching here. This one does function well. It'll say it's large and might take a while to download, which is something to consider. Sometimes I will take multiples of these and pull them in together. So let's see, which one would I like to pull in today? I've got an example of the twin pagodas in this set somewhere. Maybe not. I know that I had downloaded it previously. I'm going to try the Pagoda China, so I'm going to click on it, and it's going to say it's a pretty big model. Downloading this component might slow down SketchUp. I'm just going to hit continue, and it's going to insert the model. And often it won't insert it like sometimes it will have it attached to your mouse at the end. There we go. It has just dropped it. So it sometimes takes a little bit of time. If you feel like you cannot see it, one of the things to do is to go into the views And I had to click that. You could see that there was a slide down here. You can go to the top view. I'm sorry, this is the top view or side view, top view. This helps you to recognize how everything is. So with this view, I'm going to hit Z for zoom. There's a couple of shortcuts that I want you to recognize as you're working with this. That should be written in my tools. So orbit and zoom. Orbit is O and zoom is Z. That's one of the things that I want you guys to know. So SketchUp is fully online. If I zoom, Z is a shortcut. I can go up like you would in any other 3D program. And O is orbit. So I'm going to click O, and you can grab and pull. So this particular pagoda that I have grabbed does not have some of its surfaces already designed. Oh, there they are. Okay. So I can create quite a deep space because this is it has a lot of components on it. So I'm going to kind of click here. I'm looking for a good camera angle. This is a large model, so it might take a little bit of time. Zoom, pull in. And when I am in the zoom tool, it has a field of view right here, and this is only when I'm in the zoom tool. So for example, if I hit O, that will give me measurements, but I'm looking for a zoom for this field of view. I can click in here if it allows me, and you can go to 25, which will give you more of an isometric view. 75 will give you a really big depth of view, which is what I'm doing here. Let me click back to Photoshop. These are the ones that have really high depth of view, especially this particular one. This one's a little bit more standard. These are more isometric, the trucks that I'm doing, because I like that more isometric viewpoint. Let's see. It's not actually allowing me to do this. I might have to demo that for you guys in a little bit. H is the hand tool, and that allows you to pan over the space, which is another important thing. So H is for the hand tool, O is for the orbit tool, Z is the zoom tool, out is down, and you can click, but in is going up. The next thing that I want to show you, I'm going to actually zoom out a little bit more, is that you can change the way that the style of the landscape is. So this section right here is styles. And I'm going to just introduce this to you guys right now. Assorted styles, this is assorted styles. There are some good ones in here that I like to use for visual development. So I've clicked on this, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time for that to run. That particular line is a little bit too thick. I'm going to click on this one, see how that handles it. So often you can actually just export these with the line as they are. In a particular style for something. You can still do the orbiting, and it will kind of jump back to its previous one, right? And then give you its newer version. So that has a little bit more stylization. I'm going to go to the color sets. Some of these are really good. I'm going to click on this one. It will take off the surfaces. You can see that this actually has taken the surfaces off, and that's a pretty functional one. The default styles, this one also in the default style is pretty good. It's actually pretty similar to the color sets. Some of the ones that are line will help you to work with your line tool. There are sketchy edges. If you want to bring a little bit more stylization to your environment, you can jump into that kind of a thing. There we go. I would recommend for you on these pagoda ones to use some of the thinner lines so that it looks like something, like sometimes they get pretty muddy with the pagoda edges. So that's why I like to go with something that is the straight lines and go with a thin line so that I can actually use and model it, paint on it later. That's similar to what I have there. I might need to actually go with something a little bit more line-like. That's pretty good. Okay, so I can make this view a scene. So this is in views. It looks like the film clapperboard. I'm going to click plus and make that into a scene. Come along, little guy. Oh, no, this is not really functioning. There we go. Okay, so and I can double click to name this. So as they said, it was kind of a large file, so it's something that I can work with. So I'm going to call it front top. And then the next thing that I can do is I can make a different view of it. So I'm going to click on this view. And I'm just waiting for it. Looks like I've got to click this over and then hit H, the hand tool, to pan it back. Oh, I want to get a view which is a good one for storytelling. And so since I'm going to have an alien spaceship landing on it, I might do it from up above. So now I'm going to go back to scenes. And I'm going to say update this scene. Which is the recycle button. Just have to hover over it to get it. And you can say OK to any and all of that you want. I've said OK. And now it will update scene 2, and scene 1 should be back to what it was. But it does look like it's separate. It looks like the same thing again. So scene 1 to scene 2. You can also sometimes get these to animate between the two scenes, but I do believe that my two scenes are the same. So what I'm going to try to do this time, instead of doing it that way, I will go to this and I will say that I want front top and get the hand tool and pull it. So I'm hitting the H tool, pulling it in. O, Z for zoom. It's really not functioning for me. I'm trying to scrub over to make this 25 degrees or something like that. Maybe I type it. Oh, it is getting me. Okay, so you can't actually highlight over it. You have to type it in there. So I'm going to click 75, maybe delete, and hit 75, return. When I hit 75, you can see that it's much more extreme. H. And zoom. And orbit. It's thinking about it. Has to be pretty fast internet. So my goals as SketchUp kind of pulls in is to make a file that I can bring into Photoshop. So then I can do some drawing on it from there, and then make my simple alien crash landing. So it would be something like this. I can even grab the lines from this and then do my fills directly from that. So let's see, how are we doing? Oh, so that is moving from scene 1 to scene 2. O, Z, type in 25, hit return, zoom in. See, 25 is more isometric, and 75 is, and I just hit return, just waiting for that. Zoom goes in like this. O pulls in. H, pan. Zoom, pull out just a bit. H for the panning. So we'll pan this way. Just thinking about it. So the goal here is to try to get a good environment. I have shadows on, it's casting. I'm going to talk about shadows and that sort of thing after I have gotten my style the way that I want it, which is pretty much like this. So I'm going to X out of styles. I'm going to X out of views. We'll be able to get that more later, and then also X out of components. This display, which is, I like to call them the Harry Potter glasses, will allow you to get rid of things like guides and section planes and cuts and things like that if you need to. But you definitely want to have shadows on, checked, because if you have shadows not checked, it's not as deep of a value in terms of understanding the space. The other thing I'm going to show you guys next is fog. And just to show you kind of how that functions, this piece has fog on it, and you're able to go from really good high contrast scene contrast to lower contrast scene contrast. Same thing that's happening in this file. This has even deeper fog on for that scene contrast. So I'm going to check fog on, and I'm going to uncheck use background color, which always seems weird because you actually have to, there we go. We're going to choose a color, and I do encourage you guys to use some warm colors as we look to, or I'm sorry, some cool colors like blues, grays, blue-greens, purples that are pretty low saturation for this particular project, because we're going to also deal with the illusion of space. So that's the background color. I'm going to now play with the fog in terms of illusion of space to really try to push this back area back. So you can see that it's starting to fade back. The line is actually, looks to me like it's actually getting in the way. This line is not being affected, but the objects are. So at this point, I'm going to go back to the way that the style is, and I'm going to choose something that's a little bit more, allows the line to go back in space as well. So that's that assorted line. That looks like it might be too complicated for the thin line that we're going to try to have on our project. I'll go to default styles. I'm just waiting for that to happen. There we go. The default styles is really nice because it already has the line that's incorporated. My recommendation on this, I'm trying to get to the fog again, we want to have some of the building coming out for that illusion of space, but some of it going back in space. Things like this that are kind of incorrect, we know that that's something that we'll have to fix in Photoshop, but that will be fine. The other thing that I want to get rid of is the axes, so I'm going to go to that. That's in display, so I can uncheck that. I can also uncheck any guides, and that's going to be good. Okay, so I'm pretty excited about the way that that's functioning right now. So my goal is to actually put this, the view of it, I'm going to push this way. SketchUp will do an export directly of the frame of reference that you have. So that's important to recognize, and I want to get this pushed up a little bit more over to here. So what I'm going to do is hit the pan tool. I'm going to push this up here. I'm losing some of my dimensions, so I'm going to hit O and bring this back down again. Okay, so that's a little bit more like how I want it. And then I'm going to hit the zoom tool again, so Z, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. So that is looking pretty sweet. I'm in an HD format. I'm liking the perspective that I've got here and feel like it's something that I wouldn't really be able to get from my own drawing. So here we go. I'm going to start to export this. First, you're going to hit save. This is being saved to your username inside of SketchUp. So we're gonna, has like kind of folders. I've got all my other kind of Pagoda projects that I had shown you in Photoshop already over there. You can see that that's what I'm putting into it. So this is going to be called Pagoda Alien Crash for me. And then I'm going to click save here. Okay, so now you can see that it's got its name and it's saving. We're going to give it a little bit of time depending on how much internet speed you have. Okay, so now it's saved. The next thing that I want to show you guys to do is, oops, I think that I clicked the wrong thing. We need to export this. Okay, so they're always hiding things, but here it is. It's underneath the folder. We're going to click export, and there's a lot of different options. You could bring it in as a file into one of your 3D programs, even into Photoshop as a 3D file if you do the, I believe it is the OBJ file, but you need to get that from the Pro account. For our purposes, we're just going to do the PNG, which will allow us to have clear background. So export PNG. And this shows you the dimensions that you're going to be exporting it as. I could pick the scenes. I'm going to right now hit export as a PNG, and larger images might take a while. That's fine. I could have changed that to a little bit closer to the 1920 by 1080. In retrospect, that is my recommendation. However, this will be a little bit larger, the one that I have, than the 1920 by 1080-ish. So I think it will be fine. So the next thing I want to do is export it with just the line. So that I have something that I can work with. Kind of like when we're working in Photoshop, we have line on one layer and then color on another. That's what I'm going to want to do. So I'm actually going to never move with the orbit or the zoom tool. That's really an important thing, because if you do that, you will alter the view of the piece. So next, I'm going to go to the styles, and I may have picked out a favorite one from before, but so I'm going to go to the straight lines and pick the most simple of the straight lines. See how that turns out. It's kind of like rolling the dice a little bit. It looks pretty good. I would have to finish a lot of this line in here. So I'm going to consider a different one. So I'm going to go to this one, and you can keep playing with them as you want. This one has less depth to it because it gets darker and thicker back here, so I'm not pleased with that one. I'm going to go up to the sketchy edges and see if I actually like these stylistically. It's pretty good. It actually feels like it's got a little bit of an Asian effect, so I might actually go with that, but I'm going to kind of keep exploring until I find something that I like. one is the one I'm clicking on right now. Still too much darkness in the back. Try this one from the default styles. You can see that it doesn't go through to see-through. Ooh, that's lovely. I think that might be just almost the same as what I picked before, but we'll go with that one. So that's my next step, is to export this file. So we're going to export the PNG using the same dimensions. I want to not have these on there because I'm going to have to go and draw those out. So I'm going to hit cancel. So that axis is something that I don't want to have on there. So you can see that in the view, and we're going to turn the axis off. And I don't really see any guides, so I'm going to be fine with that. Now I'm going to export. So export the PNG, and you can turn on transparent background, but it might not actually have it. So I'm going to just turn that off. Oh. So explore until you get that. I'm going to export as a PNG. I'm going to say continue. So my goal is to take those two images and overlay them on top of each other in Photoshop. And that way I have line on top of something that has more color, and I can work with that here. So I have two of these right here. I'm going to go show those two in the Finder, and so in my downloads, I have these two files, and this is what I want to open in Photoshop. So I'm shift clicking through them, and then open with Photoshop 2020 is the version that I'm in. Okay, so starting to bring them up right here. Good. I'm going to hit full screen, F for full screen, and this is that beautiful image. It is a PNG. It doesn't have any transparency, however. My layers are over on the other computer screen. Let me pull them in. Next thing I'm going to do is hit F for full screen and actually go to Window, Arrange, 2 up. I'll do it horizontal. And I want to get the other one. All right, so I'm back, and we have our two files that I can overlay on top of each other. So I've got the one with the color, which helps me to get to color, and then I've got the one that is just the line. So my goal is to, in layers, I'm gonna just double click this to be able to rename the layer because it's a locked layer. And I'm just gonna call this line. And then I'm going to drag this. It's actually probably better to place it because it's going to place it right on top of it. So File, Place Embedded. We want it to be embedded. I'm going to look for it, this one. And it should have placed it directly on it. Looks like it's got a little bit of issues, which I'm a little bit concerned about. I'm going to hit return. Then I'm going to hit multiply. And probably can, I don't know why it's doing that. Let me explore. So I'm going to hit V. I'm just going to try to line up the SketchUp tools. It looks like something's a little bit different with it, doesn't it? I'm gonna turn that off, and I'm gonna go to this one, and I'm gonna grab that line and zoom and hit V and view, turn snap on. Want to make sure that snap is on. I'm going to put this on to multiply, which is almost like putting it like glass, and see if this is functioning any better. And hit F for full screen, zoom, zoom, zoom. Okay, so Just right now trying to make sure that these little pieces, I'm using my arrow tools. Can probably try to match that up. So I can see that it's like off by some. I'm going to try to hit Command T and put this rotation point right here. For some of you guys, it will just line up. And this is what usually happens for me, it lines up, but not when I'm doing my videos, I guess. So I'm forgetting about what it says here and just trying to get the whole thing to match. You can hold down, well, you don't have to hold down Shift anymore. Good. That looks perfect. So I'm going to hit return. Whew. So this is with the second layer of line, and this is with the color. So I can use this particular one to kind of do some selections and adjust it. The first thing that I would want to do is kind of go into it and hit the stamp tool and kind of get rid of some of this stuff that's crazy. I'm going to double click this so that I can actually work with it. S. Let's see, bracketing. Just to kind of get rid of some of this stuff. This is actually coming from Google Earth, and so I'm hitting Option, and but it makes it kind of difficult to work with. So I'm just gonna kind of drown those things out, because they're a little bit distracting. So I'm just gonna kind of get rid of them there. Okay, easier to see at this point. I'm liking that better. Okay, so now that I have some selections, also I can hit W. You can go ahead and get, like, I've got to hit anti-alias, Command D to deselect. I'm on that layer, Command D. Right, I want to hit contiguous, Command D to deselect. And you can shift click. It's kind of trying to get through that gradient. But this is a way to kind of make some selections and to work with that. One of the things to consider doing is just taking your color down on the other layer, so you have sort of a mini colored line set. And that's a quick intro to what we can do in SketchUp and bring things into Photoshop. I'm going to hit F for full screen to show you the other things that I've kind of run through. In this file, this is right now just the flattened file, but I've done the same thing where I've brought in the colored file. If you want to take that color file and make it grayscale, you can go to that half moon cookie on the bottom and take the saturation down, which is something that I would suggest for you guys to do. That is what has happened to this one. This one actually has one with no lines, which functions really well, and the lines up above it, and a desaturation. So if I get F for full screen, Command 0 to see it big, you can see that the lines are up above it with a transparency. That's actually the style builder lines, and then this is colors. So it's a way to kind of start at getting the piece to have some atmospheric perspective. This one I'm actually liking it a lot better than the one that I just demoed. And we could do things like add our alien crash scene right in here. So I can even just kind of sketch that up here first. So B, and choose a pencil and Command D. It's kind of not working. Hit D for default. There we go. I just have to really push really hard on this particular one. So looking for an alien spaceship and to be sucking up all the koi fish from this. Okay, so we're back. So I just wanted to remind you of what we would like to accomplish with the Sketchup project in terms of the Pagoda demo. I really want you guys to be able to work in SketchUp, orbiting, panning, and zooming, and working with the depth of field. These are my images that I got from there. Next, I'm going to show you how to get a little bit more simple images. But I'm going to go to the course site, and our goal is to actually use SketchUp to do the Pagoda exercise, and then you're going to do your spaceship environment exercise. So the goal being these things: download objects from the 3D warehouse, choose a camera angle, choose a depth of field, choose a style, add fog, export as a graphic, and draw over as needed in Photoshop. So I have not done that completely over here, but I want to show you some ones that have been more completed in the past. This is really more like that. Let's see. Okay, so here's an example of me doing some pre-visualization where there's some fight scenes in front of a pagoda. Look, this is an example of something that's a little bit more finished from SketchUp, where I've got a spaceship that's trying to explode, and I would do some drawing on the I'll actually work on this for a little bit. So it's going to be hitting the Frank Lloyd Wright house. So I'll go to layers, and I'm going to do a hue sat, and I'm just going to desaturate the entire thing. So I'm in grayscale, and then I'm going to go back to layers, and I'm going to make a new layer above it. And this is where I want to kind of really do some explosions. I'm going to keep it kind of fun and yes, slightly gimmicky, but that's the idea. This line layer, I would want it to be all on one above it. And this line that I'm using right now is really coming from more of my painting approach. So I'm going to take it down in opacity quite a bit, and then I'm going to do a refreshed line. So I'm going to hit V for brush. The brush that you guys have, if you go to the brushes right here, the general brushes, these hard pressure size brushes, are good ones, but we're going to actually go to this style of brush for the technique that we're using. And we're going to make it quite small. We're going to make this one a 4 pixel. And oops, Command Z, I'm actually going to make it even smaller than that. Make it a 2 pixel. There we go. So as I'm brushing, that was a little bit shaky, you can see. I can take the smooth up on it and get my brush marks to not be so choppy. So I'm still a little bit shaky there, so I'm going to take the smooth up again. And now I'm getting more in line with what I want to have. So this is a technique that you can do. You can call this line explosion, and then you would just kind of keep making new layers for what you need. So spaceship, if you want to, Command Z, I'm going to zoom over the spaceship, and B for brush, and kind of use some of my line work, Command Z. You can also make things very straight by clicking once, and then holding shift, and then clicking again, and then holding shift and clicking again, holding shift and clicking again. Now I've let go of the mouse, I'm clicking here and holding shift. And this is a way to get very straight lines. I'm holding shift, clicking, holding shift, clicking, holding shift. And this will start to make it look a little bit more like what was coming out of SketchUp from some of the other examples that I've gotten from the style builder. So I'm just holding shift as I'm going, clicking, and then holding shift. If you do want to have round lines, you can draw them, and something that's a little bit more discovered. But this is essentially a technique that can give you very, very straight, functioning lines. So I'm just looking for some real structure here. And if I need a curve, I can try to make it. And sometimes I just draw multiple times. There we go, made a good one. So from here to here, and then this, Command Z, this, Command Z. I'm gonna smooth it a little bit more. So one of the things that you have to determine when you're working on these spaceship designs and this hard edge surfaces is how much more detail you want on here than what was initially on the original piece, right? So that's up to you. These are going to be little suction cup things. So I'm zooming in and out and kind of working in. One of the things that I want you guys to also do as you're working on your spaceship is to kind of think about what are the surfaces that you need to be able to show to prove that it is a very large ship. Maybe there's extra pieces. Door pieces, flanges that would come in and out. So these are things that help it to kind of have some scale. And remember, I'm zoomed in right now, so when I'm zooming out, I can start to see what is happening with the scale. So I'm getting to where I want to go, and this is where I want you guys to do some draw-overs. I wouldn't have to do a draw-over too much on this Frank Lloyd Wright house, especially if I had the SketchUp file and I had one that had just the line. I could go in and get it with just the line. But we've got some atmospheric perspective. This spaceship, I would want to have potentially the opacity of this to go back in space. You can see now it's got less scene contrast and it's starting to really pull forward. Whereas the line work on the Frank Lloyd Wright house, I would want it to be, I'm going to click there and then hold down shift all the way across. I want this to be darker and oops, Command Z, need to click, 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 shift, shift. Okay, so now I've started to get that Frank Lloyd Wright house in there. I'm going to make a new layer, drop some white on it. Double click on the background layer, just hit OK, put this down here. G for dump, I want white, so I'm going to hit X. You can also flip it like that and then dump white here. So right now I'm just going to kind of turn off these things so I can start to see kind of how it's starting to look without the SketchUp file there. You can kind of trace over the elements that are in the file or use some of the lines, but we will eventually have to do fills on these things. So I'll get to that in another assignment, but essentially you're going to be doing drawing until you get to the point where it starts to look like this kind of file. or this kind of file. You can have the background elements in there, or the and the fog, or you can have it have good illusion of space. That's actually coming from the fog, and this is actually coming from a good style choice. So there wasn't a lot of drawing that Jacob had to do in order to get that look the way that he wanted. So I'm going to pause here, and now you have a goal of doing drawing over the SketchUp file, like what I'm doing right here. Hit F for full screen, zoom. That's kind of our goal, and this is just a start of it.